Hello, everyone. So, today let us talk about project roles in Jira. Now, project roles is a wonderful feature or way in Jira to, of course, group your users. So, basically, within a project role, you would have users. Now, we all know that a role is different from a group. Group is nothing but a group of users, as the name suggests, and group can only be modified by your admins, or basically, I should say, to add or modify users in a group, you need admin rights. It could be done, of course, manually, or maybe from your Active Directory, whatever you're using. But a role is basically a way to create a team. So maybe you can create a permission scheme in your Jira where you can assign that permission scheme to a project, and you will let your project managers, project admins to manage the team, so they can add people to multiple roles. Now, although this is a great thing that we can do in Jira, and I quite like that, and the recommendation is always to rely on project roles, because you don't really want your users to reach out to you every day to add or modify users from a group. Just create permission scheme based on these roles and let them manage their team. Now, the thing is, if you're using Jira in an organization where, let us say, the organization is not big, it's not really a massive organization, and usually, not always, but usually the roles are something that you can define and you can reuse across your organization. For example, your role could be developers, your role could be testers, your role could be, let us say, scrum masters, your role could be, in this case, I'm looking at my list, project sponsors, your role could be program manager, your role could be technical lead, architect, right? No, so these are the roles that, usually, not always, but usually. The thing is, or the problem is, that these roles are available in all the projects. So whenever you go to a project in Jira, so right now I'm looking at the system section, but if I go to a project, let us say my company managed project, and if I go to the project settings to basically modify the users, the thing is that these roles are available for anyone to use in all the projects. Right now I'm on the free plan. I can't really show you the paid one because that is not really something that I can do. But on my free plan, which I use for demonstration, we don't really have the option to, because this is, of course, one limitation of a free plan. Now, the thing is that these roles, although these roles are great, and you can do a lot of wonderful things with your roles, but the problem is that sometimes you need to create roles specific to only some teams, and you can't really do that. Let us say you have built one process in Jira where you have defined in the workflow some approval stages. So you can, of course, do that, and you can then add people to the project role. But whenever you're setting up a new process in Jira, you have to basically look at and reuse whatever roles that you already have. But the problem is that to begin with, I believe there should be something called as a project role scheme, so that only certain roles are available in a project. Number one, I think that might be useful, although it's not really a major thing in Jira. We can live without it because project roles are not really anyways. Even if I'm able to see as a project admin all the other roles, fine. But the problem is that people usually get confused. For example, if I'm, and that is a problem. For example, I have built a process in Jira where I have defined everything. I have also done the documentation. But usually documentation is not very easy to keep up to date. And more importantly, when you roll out Jira to a new team, people hardly read documents. Even after doing all the training. And it is always a pain. So it is always better to just do it in the tool. And of course, use training, use documentation. But if I am asking someone to manage their own list of people in their project role, they should ideally see only the roles that we want them to use, not really all the other roles, right? So this is one thing. The other thing is that if you want to create, because I think if this happens, like project specific roles, then it would be great. The other thing is that the association of role is basically with the user. So you have, of course, one user can be part of one or two roles, right? And that is one-to-one mapping, or in a way, one-to. I mean, there is no like one-to-n many any or n mapping. Basically, it's just one level, like project and role. That is it. But sometimes we also need third dimension, and that happens quite a lot with me, and I think that would really help. Let us say you. So there are a couple of ways of doing it, by the way. Let us say you have to build a system where multiple teams are involved, right? Let us say team A, B, C, D. Now, within those teams, you will have these roles. Let us say you would have a project manager in team A, a project manager in team B, and so on. And they may be using a different project. If they're using a different project, then great. And that would definitely be a good way to configure multi-project or multiple team setup, and that is how we should do it. But sometimes, this is of course just one example, sometimes you have to just use one project. And when you have to use one project and you have like multiple teams, because in Jira there is no real team concept. I mean, we do have advanced roadmap teams, but that is not really massively useful, because when we talk about team, it is basically the roles. You have to basically do something with the role, and that is your team. And I think there should be some kind of a mapping between role, team, and users. So that would be wonderful, because in that case, what we can do, we can just have one project, let us say, where you can have a project manager for team A, a project manager for team B, and developer for team A and developer for team B. It can be different projects, but when you have the team part involved, you can actually do a lot of wonderful things when it comes to identifying, let us say, maybe capacity, or maybe the allocation, or more importantly, if you want to define the ownership, who owns this particular bug, which team should be working on it. So you can of course use, if you're using advanced roadmap, you can use teams, but that is not really going to automatically assign or pick up the user. I mean, you can do few things, but for me, based on my experience, my requirement was always around some permissions or approvals. So basically, this was of course just one example. The other couple of examples that I was thinking of is basically having like a representative from each and every team, and we want, let us say, team A's project manager to approve something, and then team B's project manager will approve something else, right? Something like that. So I think one more level, or like team plus project role plus user. I think if we can combine these three things together natively in Jira, of course there are workarounds that we use, and on data center version of Jira, it was not really a massive problem, because we could have always, I mean, we can always write our own script to maybe hard code something, or maybe just in the script itself create, for example, if I have to create some condition, right, a workflow condition, I can always add something like, okay, if the user is, or so only people who are part of this role can do this, but because it is my own script, I can always hard code something in it. That is of course possible when you're using your own script, especially on data center version, on-prem version. On cloud, of course, things are not really that simple. And when it comes to achieving these complex use cases, we have limitations. But anyways, I think just having a role-based approach is still fine. But as I just mentioned, it would be wonderful, great if you can have role schemes, and a role, team, and user mapping, something like that. All right, that is it. That is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you learned something new. Thank you very much. Bye bye.